Arizona. Today, a barren wasteland of deserts and flower beds, inhabited by pirates, formal people, Santa Claus, the Sino-Dutch, angels, Portuguese, and Flintstonian spillway-dwelling degenerates, all of whom are but pawns in the endless struggle between the ites and the ultra-French. Yet it was not always so. For once the ancestors of these two warring tribes lived together in harmony as a single people with a single language. Before and Theburon, there was Therverul, known today as French. Certain discredited scholars have recently published a work on the Ultra-French language, purporting through their analysis to explicate the link between this modern tongue and the ancient French language. Yet they failed to take into account any features of in their analysis at all. I am here to right that wrong, and present you with a complete and utterly and factually true description of the ancient French language based on a reconstructive analysis of its two descendants. The French language was agglutinative, highly inflected, and utilized OVS word order, like all good languages do. Note that word order is strictly observed and inflexible in spite of the fact that abundant case marking renders it completely redundant. What exactly motivated the speakers of early Ultra-French to move towards a semi-free word order tending towards SVO or SOV is an active area of research. While French syllables can ostensibly only have two initial and two final consonants and no more than two vowels, it does still allow for larger consonant clusters than are generally seen in The reconstructed consonant inventory of the French language shows us the roots of all the distinguishing phonologies of both Ultra-French and the sounds being na, sa, za, sa, sha, sa, za, va, fa, va, ha, ra, la, and ha. It also carries the non-pulmonic consonants k, and h, and the mellifluous vowels u, I, a, e, e, a, Note the absence of the R-colored consonants present in Ultra-French, as well as the absence of most uvular trill-colored consonants and all of the uvular trill-colored vowels present in In both cases, the uvular trill ultimately came to be assimilated by its nearby phonemes. Reconstruction indicates that this process was already well underway at the time of the Ultra-French split, as demonstrated by the fact that both s and sh in all instances had already assimilated their nearby rhotic trills. Though these phonemes would be dropped in Ultra-French, this process would ultimately proceed to a much greater extreme in with the uvular trill assimilating to many of the language's consonants and even most of its vowels. Even to the point that, unlike in Ultra-French, the uvular trill would become no longer phonemic on its own in at all. The non-pulmonic consonants, on the other hand, would become increasingly obsolete in Ultra-French, following the general trend of mumblification that language exhibits, while in these would be significantly elaborated. All French affixes precede the root word, and are applied in a regular sequence running from gender to tense to number to case. When the meeting of two affixes would create a vowel or consonant cluster, the phoneme closer to the root word is eliminated. French verbs are inflected for the tense, number, and gender of their agent, while nouns are inflected for their tense, number, gender, and case. But it is in no way that simple. The quote-unquote scholars of Ultra-French previously mentioned noted with some perplexity the presence of a second future tense in that language, treating it as a mere curiosity with no antecedent in the ancient French language. In reality, both the second future tense of Ultra French and the elaborate noun and verb classifier system in are remnants of the ancestral ancient French condition. French had two complete sets of tenses. One going from far past to hesternal to hodiernal past to habitual to present to persistent to future, with the other, in contrast, having non-future pluperfect, crasternal future and far future, two numbers, not two numerals, but two different systems for inflecting for number, the first proceeding from subsingular to icositeteral to plural, with icositeteral of course being the default, with the second system having the null, dual, trial, pile, tetral, pental, hexal, heptal, octal, and nonal, and not two, but three distinct systems for marking gender. Well, sort of gender. The first proceeding from ultra-feminine to infra-feminine to yellow to beige to cyan. The second containing non-masculine, purple, pink, hyperformal human, brown, adult human, orange, small animal, ultramasculine, and inframasculine, and the third containing masculine, insectile, insect, which is different, and of course the default, piratical, quotative, other, blue or green, red, black, or white, child or large animal, inanimate object, whether astrological phenomenon or abstraction. Which tense, number, or gender applies to any specific word is utterly random. The precise conditions which led to the emergence of this system are lost in the mists of prehistory, but leading scholars in the field hypothesize that perhaps ancient Proto-French speakers lived in a condition of high bilinguality with one or more other languages with conflicting tense, number, and/or gender systems which became incorporated into the language with the adoption of loanwords. Proto-French is also believed to have had a significant impact on the language of a small tribe of Indo-Europeans, leading to the complex noun declension system present in Classical Latin. Though this is less certain, as Classical Latin is known only from reconstructions based on its descendant Ecclesiastical Latin, which itself is preserved only as a tense marker in Seraphim. In any event, the descendants of French took this system and innovated on it in drastically different directions. In Ultra French, the two systems for tense and number drastically simplified and combined, while the system of gender was discarded altogether. Remarkably though, the French case system, which goes from absolutive to nominative to vocative to partitive to accusative to genitive to dative to incessive to interessive to ablative to allative to considerative to instrumental, remained completely intact. This relative paucity of inflections is theorized to have led to the development of polysynthesis in later Ultra-French. On the other hand, did not simplify these systems, but rather radically reanalyzed them. The two number systems were simply consolidated. The second tense system reduced down to just the non-future and the future, and became responsible for the numbering of all nouns. Tense 1, on the other hand, absorbed the abandoned categories from Tense 2, and came to be applied to verbs, becoming the unique verb classifier system. Of course, any modern person of any education understands that has a system of gender using tenses for its verbs. Similarly, the three systems of gender consolidated and then broke apart into gender proper, color, and animacy, with gender and color becoming inherent properties of nouns, and animacy combining with a novel evidentiality system to become the basis of ish pronouns. In this chaos, however, the entire inflectional system inherited from French broke down. Prefixes were dropped entirely, and the case system, the only one which did not require reanalysis, was also discarded. The loss of case, however, provided the speakers of early with an opportunity. Remember how case was comparatively simple? Well, it isn't. In addition to adding prefixes, the case system in French employed a system of mutation. Properly employing the case system of French involved putting the first consonant and last vowel of every root word through a track of mutation, with each case having a unique mutation track for both vowels and consonants. While in Ultra French the mutation system was dropped, in When the elimination of case inflection left the mutation track orphaned, it instead attached to the other systems of classification, leading to hideously complex whole-word triple-layer mutations in place of slightly clunky agglutination. One area where Ultra-French was by far the more conservative of the two languages is pronouns, as it preserves French's boundary of personal, possessive, relative, and demonstrative pronouns all inflected for case. Ultra-French also agrees with French in its lack of articles. The 137,280 irregular articles of are theorized to have descended from personal ejaculatory particles specific to every individual, bestowed at adulthood or the achievement of full community status, though the circumstances and timing at which this status could be achieved varied by gender. Indeed, reconstruction suggests that 68% of articles originated from individuals of the dominant cyan gender. With that, we're ready for the translation. No, we're not. Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think the glorious speakers of the ancient French language were stupid? Do you think that they would be relegated to speaking such an uncursed language like the swine of the spillways? No. For the ancient French masters attained heights of linguistic power that we cannot imagine. The first millimeter of the first step of the first mile on the road to understanding their power is knowing how it was given to these paragons to open their third eye and their second mouth, and conversed with God in the divine Franco-Enochian tongue. In order to form an understanding of Enochian, we must first look at two contemporary Arizonan languages, Hoptiam and Seraphim. Both of these languages resulted from attempts to combine human and divine means of communication. Seraphim being developed by lower-ranking angels as a means of communicating with their followers, and Hoptiam being an attempt by Sino-Dutch mathematicians to see God in matrix algebra. But what if I told you both of these languages' most infamous features, the fourth-dimensional sentence tree-based word construction in Seraphim, and the infinite base matrix and encryption algorithm of Hoptiam, were actually intended to be concessions to the puny mortal minds of those who would have to understand them? Let us begin at the beginning. The native language of angels, demons, bodhisattvas, archons, and other celestial beings is Enochian, which fundamentally conveys meaning through binary hierarchical trees of symbolic concepts. This system is preserved mostly intact in Hoptiam, while in Seraphim it has been replaced with a more abstract sentence tree, because the Seraphs thought that would be easier for humans to understand. All concepts in Enochian group into one of four categories. The first three are analogous to verbs, adjectives, and nouns, while the last contains only the null concept. Not the concept of nullness, but the null concept. All Enochian utterances are based on a root verb. From the root verb, any daughter concepts may descend, but only if the proper hierarchy is observed. Enochian speakers perceive the universe as being fundamentally based on actions. Descriptors and qualifiers, analogous to adjectives, may only be described as aspects of actions, meaning they may only appear as the daughter nodes of verbs. Actual physical objects are only abstractions from the perspective of Enochian speakers, however. Hence, they can only appear as daughter nodes of adjectives, or aspects of descriptors. Every concept in Enochian, and note that concepts are not words, is defined with a length and an angle. The length is used to construct the segments which make up the tree, while the angle is used to define the relationship between a concept node and the segments of its daughter nodes. All nodes, irrespective of category, must have exactly two daughter nodes. At this point, you may have noticed a couple of potential problems with actually communicating with this language. For instance, what if a concept you are attempting to communicate has only one daughter concept, or none at all, or describe a noun carrying out an action without any adjective involved? Moreover, root verbs do not actually portray their length component as they have no parent to form a segment with, and terminal nodes have no daughters through which to enact their angular component. All of these problems are addressed with the null, a unique concept which may fulfill the grammatical purpose of any other without imparting additional information. Note that, implicitly, all concept trees in Enochian are actually tiny segments of infinitely large trees consisting entirely of nulls otherwise. Again, the null node is sort of present in Humoresia, but there it is used mostly to convey degrees of activeness. However, none of what we constructed is actually articulated, at least not directly. All that is articulated are these segments drawn between sororal nodes, hence why concepts are not directly analogous to words. A hint of this may be found in examining seraphim, which of course requires 7 distinct articulators to speak properly, including 4 photic articulators, though its photemic inventory is highly restricted, containing only 3 photemes, and their use in the language is vestigial and mostly redundant. This is actually an unconscious holdover from the serif's native language. For in Enochian, the means of articulation is the emission of photons, defined on one scale by the amount of photons being emitted, ranging from total darkness to the point at which photonic matter begins to form, and on the other by the frequency of the photons being emitted. Since sororal segments frequently overlap, and because utterances can be arbitrarily long, Enochian requires arbitrarily many discrete articulators to speak properly. Moreover, since the objects of articulation are line segments projected across an infinitely divisible Cartesian plane, Enochian contains an infinite photemic inventory. At this point, you may have also noted that the duration of articulation is never defined. The archons can perceive and traverse the timeline at will in either direction. Hence, all durations and all orders of articulation are equally comprehensible, and thus free. Now, this could be used to impart additional information, but it isn't. Similar to how stress and tone are in English. Another consequence of its speakers' fourth-dimensional perceptions is that Enochian possesses free concept order. If we were to project this tree across time, then geometrically it would work equally well for an Enochian speaker irrespective of what order its nodes were in, meaning that the articulated sororal segments can be broken up and scattered almost at random. Hence why neither sororal segments nor nodes are exactly analogous to words. This also means that Enochian is either pre-glossed or effectively unglossable, depending on how you look at it. This is similar to the V to T to C movement in Seraphim, in which certain morphemes are projected backwards in time to fill null nodes of sentence trees, but that isn't so much an intentional part of the language as an unconscious serif habit which became codified through use. But how did the learned masters of ancient French speak this language? Well, they quite simply swapped light for sound, with vocal volume equating to photon density and voice pitch equating to light frequency, with articulatory duration being defined as equivalent to the duration of the concurrent equivalent articulation in French. Yes, if you speak Enochian, you must speak French at the same time. Franco-Enochian is as close to the divine tongue as humans are permitted to get. Communicating in the language of celestial beings may appear simple, but it should never be undertaken lightly. After all, in ancient times, a certain tribe of indeterminate origin attempted what the French masters succeeded at, and it broke their minds completely and utterly. Retaining only memory of the root verb system, this tribe, left to wander the flowery wasteland of Arizona, began communicating by slapping each other in the face with found pieces of vegetation. Historical linguists refer to this ancient system of communication as Old Snapdragon Rose, the ancestor of both modern Snapdragon Rose and 21st century Humoresia. While it is common to refer to 21st century Humoresia as a descendant of Snapdragon Rose, this is both factually inaccurate and politically repressive. Both 19th century Humoresia and early modern Snapdragon Rose emerged as independent emanations of Middle Snapdragon Rose. 21st century Humoresia speakers are often accused of anti-Snapdragon hatred and history theft, masking the historical systemic oppression of Humoresia speakers by Snapdragon Rose speakers dating back centuries and continuing into the modern day. I consider it important for anyone who touches on this subject to reiterate the call for a free and independent Humoresia. With that issue out of the way, we can get on to the actual Franco-Enochian translation. Now, I could have been elegant and constructed the entire Enochian utterance as a single tree, but I'm recording this the day the submission is due, and I don't have time for that. I've already downsized this project from what it was originally supposed to be. Also, what you will see on screen corresponds to the French sentence being spoken, even though the Enochian concepts of the entire excerpt will be distributed evenly across the entire utterance without any particular order to them. If you are new to the Cursed Conlang scene, especially if you did not see my entry from last year, this video probably made absolutely no sense. But if you made it this far, you should probably watch that video on the grammar and vocabulary of which I still can't actually pronounce correctly. Moreover, if you're interested in non-Cursed Conlang based world building, I'm doing that on this channel too. I only have one video in that series, and it's just a description of my research thus far, but life has recently cleared up, so I should be able to add actual content to that soon. So, stay tuned for that, and in any event, thanks for watching.